Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. In today's video, I'm going to talk about 12 French learning mistakes to avoid for TEF Canada. If your goal is to prepare for TEF Canada, what are the mistakes that you should avoid as a beginner? We are going to talk about 4 mistakes at a beginner phase, and then 4 mistakes to avoid as an intermediate, those who are learning the intermediate level of French, and then 4 mistakes to avoid while your TEF Canada preparation. This is going to be a video taken from the experience that I got from last 3 to 4 years when I started learning French and then cleared my TEF Canada exam. But after, when I started teaching students and they cleared the exam, all the experiences that I had and all the learnings that I absorbed, this is the overall conclusion on what not to do if you're preparing for your TEF Canada exam. It's going to be very important, so stay up until the end. So the 4 mistakes that you're making if you're a beginner, the first one is going to be starting French vocabulary rather than grammar if you're starting your French. This is one of the biggest mistakes any beginner can make, and we do actually make. Even when I started learning French, I remember that I started by learning words rather than the grammar or rather than the concept behind how French is constructed, which is not a useful thing to do. Why? Because when you're learning French, if you start learning French, if you just focus on vocabulary, you can learn word by word. You will be able to memorize vocabulary, days of the week, flowers, food and stuff like that, but you won't be able to understand the connection between the words on how the sentences are formulated and what are the reasons behind the application of certain rules in French. So that is why it's necessary that you start from grammar first and focus your 80% attention to grammar rather than vocabulary. Okay, because vocabulary, once your grammar is strong, vocabulary can be built up over the time like the layers of onions. But it is important that you get good in grammar. But once grammar is good, then later in your intermediate journey, you can consume more vocabulary through reading and listening. So you don't have to really worry about vocabulary. This will happen naturally over the time. But main thing is grammar. So this is the first mistake that you should avoid. The second mistake is going to be trying to find a perfect resource, then using one simple resource to start. I have seen a lot of people, those who connect with me on Instagram and on YouTube, and see, their problem is genuine, that they want to find a perfect resource to start. But the thing is, they take 2-3 weeks in order to just figure out which resource to use, rather than just starting at one point. Okay, even if you would have started with my Frenchify playlist, this would have been a perfect opportunity for you to start everything step by step. But if you were not aware about it, that's okay. You could have started just even with Duolingo. If you just stick to Duolingo, for first few days, then you will start understanding the structure. You cannot be like, okay, today I will do Duolingo, tomorrow I will watch that video, day after tomorrow I will sign up for a library course, and then fourth day I will borrow a book from library to see how French looks like. You cannot do this. Okay, the thing is, all those 2 to 3 weeks that you wasted your time into finding a perfect resource, if you would have invested that time into just starting simply with grammar, you would have improved a lot. Okay, so that is my recommendation. Find one thing, but do that perfectly rather than finding the perfect resource in itself, because honestly, perfect resource does not exist. The third mistake to avoid is going to be overthinking on speaking, writing and pronunciation. Now, as a beginner, one of our major concerns when we are learning French is speaking and pronunciation. Why? Because we have heard it from a lot of people that, French speaking is very difficult because pronunciations are very tough in French. Firstly, get rid of this idea that, French pronunciation is difficult. For me, I never heard this misconception, or I never let it absorb in my brain that, the French pronunciation is difficult. That is why it was never difficult for me. So for you, what I recommend is, don't worry about pronunciation when you're beginning, not even the speaking. Because the thing is, when you're a beginner, your major priority is going to be to understand the structure of the language, which means, again, coming back to grammar. Strengthen your grammar. Then once your grammar is strengthened, slowly you will start building the competency of reading. Once your reading is improved, with that you start complementing listening. Once you start doing listening, then you will see a lot of improvements in your pronunciation. Why? Because when you listen something, only then you will be able to pronounce the French words properly. If you do not know how a word sounds, how can you pronounce it properly? Even if you have seen the pronunciation rules and stuff like that, this would not be possible. So you have to do a lot of listening in order to have a better pronunciation. Once your pronunciation improves, then slowly and steadily, while doing more speaking practice, you will work on your speaking as well. But see, speaking is a later stage. right now, being at first stage, you cannot worry about stage number 8 or stage number 9. That is for later. For now, you have to first work on grammar, and then once your grammar gets strong, once you start understanding about 80% of the rules in French, then you will morph and transition more into your reading and listening practices, which will make you absorb more content and absorb more language, through which you will build a subconscious base of the language in your brain, which will slowly help you start speaking and writing as well, because all of these things are interconnected. The fourth mistake to avoid is comparing French rules with English rules. This is one of the most common mistakes that I have made as well when I was learning, and any French teacher who is teaching French at one point was a learner, and if they were actually a learner, they will know this mistake that they would have made as well. And current students, those who are studying with me or with anyone else, or those who are doing self-study, they always make this mistake. Whenever they are trying to learn the French grammar, they take English grammar as a reference, which is a good thing to do, great thing to do, because you have a point of reference to connect the dots and kind of learn the concepts in that way. But when French grammar starts to go away from English grammar, or the rule starts becoming different from English grammar, then we start to question it. Oh, okay, in English this happens, but why in French this does not happen? In English we say I am 23 years old, but in French why do we say j'ai 23 ans? So those are the things which we kind of just have to agree that it's a new language. It is not possible for all the rules to be same. It will be our stupidity that we think that all the rules in French and English will be saying same. It's not possible. Okay, so that is something that you have to keep in mind right from the beginning. And once your beginning phase is done, then you will move on to the level intermediate, or you will move in the middle of getting good in the language. And this is where you will need to keep these 4 mistakes in mind. The first one is going to be thinking that you cannot do speaking practice until you find a study partner. One of the biggest excuses, I would say, this is one of the biggest excuse any French learner gives to himself or herself, is that, I'm not able to find a speaking partner, that is why I'm not able to practice my speaking. Yes, in the perfect world, or in the better scenario for you, will be having a speaking partner, but even if you do not, you still have to practice your speaking, and it is still possible to practice speaking. Taking myself as an example, when I used to practice my speaking, in the beginning I did not have any study partner. I tried finding it a lot. It was again, 2.5-3 years ago. At that time, not a lot of people were learning French, and I tried finding a lot of study partners, but it was not possible because no one else was learning French. So I had to, make myself sit and speak French to myself, which was, yes, difficult, but then over the time, I saw that when I was speaking French to myself, even though I was making mistakes, even though I was getting my pronunciations wrong, but over the span of 2-3 months of speaking to myself, I still improved my speaking a lot, and my pronunciations also got better. Okay, how did I improve my speaking? Because I, while just speaking to myself, I got away with this fear of not being able to speak. Okay, and while listening, I was able to work on my pronunciations passively as well, because as I mentioned earlier, the more you listen, the more you will be able to correct your pronunciation. So it is possible. Speaking to yourself is also a way to practice your speaking. Obviously, it's not the best method or best way possible, but it still will be an excuse if you are not able to practice speaking by yourself, and if you're just saying that you were not able to find a study partner. Okay, so please do this. If you're not able to find a study partner, which you probably might not be, you have to practice speaking to yourself. The second mistake at an intermediate level is not giving enough priority to reading and listening, and just revising grammar all the time. And this is also one of the phase where everyone gets stuck at, and this is actually one of the plateaus when it comes to learning the language. Once 80% or once the overall grammar is done, we still feel like, okay, I should revise more grammar, I should do more grammar, I should do more grammar. Why? Because you do not know the next step. It's not like that, okay, the grammar is done and you have the next step in front of you. It's just like once the grammar is done, then you theoretically you are done with all the French. But then now the major challenge is then that, what should be the next step? And your next step should be reading and listening. And a lot of people actually ignore this. Reading and listening are one of the best ways to improve your overall French. Why? Because the more you read and the more you listen, the more you will be absorbing the language, which will help you to build your subconscious and to build more comfortability in just, staying exposed to the language. Okay, so that is very important. Learning grammar is just like 20-30% of the journey. I'll be honest with you. The rest journey, most most of the journey you can cover with more reading and listening. The more reading you do on regular basis, the more listening you do on regular basis, you will improve a lot, okay? And really, it doesn't really matter what resources you are using, as long as your resources that you're using are 20% harder than your current level, okay? If any paragraph you find it easy to read, tomorrow you should be taking something 20% harder than that, okay? It should be a little challenging, not too much. As long as it's little challenging, you are going to improve over the time. Doesn't matter what resource you are using. So make sure to do this. The third mistake to not make is going to be thinking that you lack resources, okay? You do not lack resources. This is the age of internet. This is the age of abundance of information, and this is the age of AI as well. When I was learning, there was no AI as well, okay? The ChatGPT did not get launched. It just got launched in like 2022 end. That was where I gave my exam, like after 2-3 months of giving my exam. So even if you're at basic levels A1, A2, or if you're just beginning your French journey, even if you put basic A1 level reading practice on ChatGPT, you will be able to get a lot of good paragraphs to read. I mean, that is one of the perfect things to do. And if you're on intermediate, if you want like higher level of reading and listening practices, specifically talking about reading first, you just go on to Wikipedia, type any topic of your interest and convert it to French. Just read it. That is enough. Like, see, there are a lot of methods by which you can find a lot of reading resources. So please do not say that there are not enough resources in French. There are a lot of resources, or you have to just be a little bit innovative to find those resources, okay? So for reading, we have this. For listening, keep on browsing YouTube, keep on finding your channels of interest, and all the other listening resources, reading resources I've already mentioned on my program, so you can use that as well. The fourth mistake to avoid will be not repeating the reading and listening content, okay? So if you're not repeating the reading and listening content, this is a mistake, because you have to repeat what you are reading later. You have to repeat what you are listening later. Why? Because let's say if you read a particular paragraph on day 1, which was today, you learned 5-6 new words, right? Tomorrow you will learn something else, you will learn 10 to 12 more new words. But after a week, only when you read these paragraphs again, then your brain will start absorbing these new words subconsciously, okay? When you read something once, you can see the new words, but you actually did not learn them. So that is why it's very important for you to repeat your readings and listening frequently, so that you are able to get exposed to those new vocabulary again and again, through which this vocabulary will stay permanently in your brain. This is very important. So what you can do is, whatever video you watch, whatever article that you listen to, copy and paste it in your document. You can create it on Google Docs, one document for reading, one document for listening, and go through it again and again until you feel comfortable in those reading and listening practices. Now let's move on to a TEF prep journey. 4 mistakes to avoid when you are preparing actually for your TEF Canada exam. The first one is going to be taking reading and listening lightly. See, I'll be honest with you, and all throughout this video you might have heard that you might have observed that I'm focusing a little bit too much on reading and listening, but it is important. Do not take reading and listening lightly, because what happens is, in English we have this experience of being able to do reading and listening easily, okay? And we have that same perspective when it comes to French, but that is not the case, because in French TEF Canada exam or TCF Canada exam, the reading speed, you will have to be very fast when it comes to the speed of reading in order to do well in the exam. And same thing with the listening, you have to be really quick to be able to understand the sentences. So whether it's TEF Canada exam or TCF Canada exam, reading and listening should be at a very high level of volume. Don't just be like, okay, I'm able to read this paragraph, I'm good with the reading. How quick were you able to read the paragraph, okay? And if this is the audio, how much context of that audio did you understand in depth, okay? So you have to ask these questions to yourself. The second mistake that everyone makes is not having a set phrases and plan for your speaking and writing. Now, speaking and writing are sometimes overwhelming, because, in speaking, you are just right in front of the examiner and you have to speak on the spot. In writing as well, any type of question can come in and you really have to formulate correct sentences and, attempt your writing exam. But in speaking and writing, if you do not have any pre-prepared stock phrases to use, connectors to use, or pre-prepared plan on what to do regardless of what topic, so basically like a template of things to be doing, okay? If you do not have it, then you are making a big mistake. Do not just rely on the spontaneity or the improvisation all the time. Improvisation will be there, but 30% your stock will help you, and then the rest 60 to 70% will be improvisation during the exam. But this stock is very important to make you go in a proper flow with more confidence. overconfidence. The third mistake to avoid is going to be booking your exam a bit too early. I have seen this a lot of times at an acceptable level of speaking and writing as well. They just want to give the exam. Now, it's good to give the exam to analyze your weak points and strong points and, just to get experience of the exam, but it's going to be just a waste of money if you just give it a little bit too early. Okay, so for example, let's say today you feel prepared that you want to give the exam. Okay, you still wait for about 2 months from now. Why? Because there is still a lot of work to be done. Okay, you really have to be, even for your first attempt, it's important that you are comfortable in all 4 of the aspects of TEF or TCF kind of exam. Okay, it's not just like, okay, now you just started speaking, you are able to formulate stories and sentences. Now you can just like see the speaking pattern for 2-3 days and just go attempt the exam. You have to make sure that you're not giving it too early. Otherwise, when you receive the score, if it is less or too less, then there is nothing for us to analyze or for us to judge that which module to improve more or to improve less, because the improvement will have to happen in all 4 modules. So it is better to delay your first attempt a little bit, as close as possible to your actual competency that you might have. The more competency that you have while giving your exam, the more precisely you will be able to analyze which aspects you are weak in and which aspects you are strong in. The last mistake that everyone makes is the overconfidence while preparing for your second attempt. Now, let's say you gave your first attempt just to see which modules were easier or which modules have you prepared more and prepared less. Let's say reading and listening were the modules which went really well. You scored CLB 7.7, and speaking and writing were the modules where you got CLB 5.5. Now, in your second attempt, while preparing for your second attempt, what you will do is, okay, reading and listening, I've got CLB 7. Let's keep that aside. I've got CLB 7, now focus only on speaking and writing. This will be a very big mistake, because it's very good that you got CLB 7 in reading and listening, but still there is a little bit factor of luck which comes into play when giving the attempts. So you still have to practice reading and listening as much as you can, the same level which you used to do earlier, so that you can not only maintain but be sure enough that in the next attempt you will definitely 100% clear the reading and listening. With that, you will have to focus more on speaking and writing. So this is one very big mistake which you should avoid, is neglecting the other aspects if you have cleared them in your first attempt. So with this, I will end this video. Make sure to apply all these advices or avoid all these mistakes that you may make in your TEF journey. And if you would like to prepare for TEF or TCF kind of exams, you can connect with me. The link is in the bio, and make sure to study hard.